Tell me, there's the tail end of the story is what you're up to now, which I think is very interesting.
Well, yes.
Tell us what you're up to.
We were out for a walk. One day, me and my sweetheart Valerie decided we'd go for a walk somewhere. Where should we go for a walk? I said, well, I'll tell you what, I haven't been back up the camp for years and years and years. Let's go back up there and see what it's like. Used to be a nice walk down the lane. Well, I got up there and was surprised to see that the place really hadn't changed a great deal, other than the fact all the huts had gone. There was a big bunker there in its place. And
are you talking now about the top of the hill or when you've gone down the hill?
no, the top of the
Top
hill.
of the hill, yes. Okay.
Yeah, in the compound, it's a big compound.
Yeah.
So we went in and started looking around. The gates were wide open and nobody stopped us. And then eventually one guy came up and he said, can I help you? And I explained to him that I used to be serving there and that. And then he became quite interested and started talking to me. And needless to say, I was telling him how we used to do this, we used to do that. He said, well, perhaps you can tell me, why was there a load of ammunition boxes buried over there? I said, well, that's a very easy one. I said, they were filled with sand, weren't they? He said, yeah. I said, well, that's where we built ourselves a miniature rifle range. And we used those at the back of the range to absorb the shots. I said, if you'd emptied them out, you'd find them full of little bullets. Afterwards, I said to him, well, is it all right if I have a look around inside? He said, yes, certainly. I went inside. And it was most eerie to stand in the receiver hall without any radios there whatsoever. And it brought back an awful lot of memories. But essentially I felt very comfortable in there. They have not changed the inside of that hall at all since the second time I was there.
Is it being used now? Is it just an empty hall?
It's used as offices.
Okay.
Well, he's trying to sell them as offices. He didn't seem to be doing very well the last time I was up there, but anyway. So anyway, the guy, Andy, was the manager, that was it. I said to him, well, is it all right if I pop in from time to time? He said, help yourself, come back any time you like. So anyway, we continued then from there on our walk down to the bottom of the hill, and then the little road turns right towards the new station. Now that was built in my absence, that wasn't there before.
Okay.
That was totally RAF, that,
Okay.
as was the bunker.
Yeah.
Then when you get to that, the road finishes, but you can walk around the perimeter of the camp and then pick up another road which heads back up to the back of the farm.
Yeah.
Well, we started to walk up there, and Robert Smith, who's the farm manager for Simon Collins, was out ploughing that field at the time, and he come herring across the field in his tractor and pulled up. And he said, you know you're walking on private land, do you? And I said, no. I said, you know, I've been in this place all my life, sort of thing. I said, I'm quite used to it. And he said, well, you are. He said, no, I've got to warn you, you are. And then he became more sociable and told us why, and that was apparently that he has to keep a log of people walking on the land if they are off the proper track, and that isn't one of them, apparently, that bit of road. In case they're spraying or they're doing something like that, and someone at a later date says, well, I caught this terrible disease because you were spraying. And it's as simple as that. So I said, well, is it all right for us to walk around here in future? And he said, yeah, sure it is. So we carried on, and as we came back up towards the farm was this, want of a better word, derelict mast. A mast all covered in brambles and trees and goodness knows what. You could not see inside that compound clearly. And I said to Valerie, that is not in use, it's definitely not in use, and boy, wouldn't it make a smashing radio station. So I think she sort of quivered a bit at the time. Here it comes. She knew my hobby and she's very supportive of it. So anyway, the club which I belong to at Harwell Amateur Radio Society, were looking for new premises, and I thought this might be suitable. So I've got hold of Robert Smith at a later date and said, well, who does that belong to? And he said, well, Simon Collins. So I got on Simon Collins and said, would he be prepared to rent it out? And he said, well, yes, he would. We negotiated. And in the meantime, we got the outside of it cleared, and more or less the inside wasn't too brilliant, but it was all right. And myself and Valerie went up there one day, and I dug out the entrance to the place, and she got a mop bucket out and brought the kettle up and gallons of water in the back of the car, watched the whole, I mean, it was green mould all over it.
But what is it that you've got a compound with
A
a
compound
mast
with a beautiful little hut inside.
and a hut? And the hut is made
When
of
we
what?
opened up that hut, it was full of microwave radio equipment, which they used for transmitting their information from the radio site to the back of the John Radcliffe Hospital, because that's line of sight.
Okay.
And from there it went out to places like Stanmore and the other RAF establishments. So anyway, this was an ideal mast, and having
But
found
how long has that been shut?
it was shut for at least 5 years.
Okay. So
That's why it was all grown over, I
okay,
guess.
Yeah.
Inside that hut was as dry as a bone. The documentation for the equipment that was in there was still lying about, as dry and as crisp as the day it was put in there. And all there was a ventilator in the floor and a ventilator in the top, and a fan ventilator which wasn't working.
Yeah.
Another little story on that in a moment. Anyway, I said to Simon, what do you want to do with all this microwave gear? And he said, well, you can have it. Of course, it was goodies to whoever, you know, it was beautiful stuff. And I've still got that. But we took it out of the cabinets, and I've built radio equipment into the cabinets again since. And this cabinet we call our digital cabinet, because in there we've got a computer and we can transmit digital information from the computer by various means. There's about 4 or 5 different ways you can do this. And there's 2 little stations built into the top, with an aerial right at the top of that mast.
How high is the aerial? How is the mast?
It's 114 foot.
So who's going up there to fix that?
We have one of our members, fortunately, has been trained in mast climbing. Would you believe? No, seriously. And but we need a special, this is another good piece, we need a special piece of kit which is known as a rail lock. This clips onto the side of the ladder on the mast, and then it's attached to the belt and harness that the guy's wearing. So as he climbs up, he puts it up, and if he was to fall, it would lock and he'd be held. But we hadn't got one of those, and he had to borrow it from a friend of his every time we wanted it, and his friend was always using it, so he could never do it and we couldn't get done what we wanted. Well, I don't know whether it was luck or what, but there's a red light on top of that mast and it failed. Well, somebody had got to go up there and replace it. So I had this bright idea. I went to Simon Collins, and having done the research on it first, I said, Simon, your light's gone at the top of the tower. To get a guy to come out and climb up there for starters is in excess of £500. The lamp, I don't know how much it's going to cost you, but it's going to be 200 or 300. The sensor down the bottom obviously wants fixing, and that's going to be another 100 or 150 or something like that. Now, what we need is a rail lock, and that will cost you £378. And if you buy that for us, we'll go up and fix it. Done. So he was very, I mean, it was nice of him. I mean, he could have said, we'll get lost, but he didn't. He was very happy to give me the cheque, and I went down and picked up one. And so
have you moved now from Harlow to
no, they didn't want it. That's why I said to him, well, if you don't have it, I'm going to have it.
So this is a little club of you and your sweetheart?
So there's 4 of us
Oh,
who have set this one up, yes.
Right.
So, the first year I got most of the money for rent back from the guys' contribution. This year only one of them's given me a few quid. I'm not worried. I'm really not worried. As long as I'm alive, I should go on renting that place. And
what do you do? What do you do down there? I may ask.
Oh, just the day before yesterday afternoon, I was talking to old Terry, I think his name was, in Michigan, over the radio, or the other afternoon was Dave in Cyprus. We talk all over the world to other radio amateurs, so that's what all the equipment's, what we're building the equipment in there for.
Right.
The next rather large project we have there is to build a platform at the top of the tower, so that Chris, our mast climber, can comfortably work up there, because at the moment he has to sort of try and hang on with one hand and do whatever it is with the other. And if we can build this little platform, then he'll be able to work comfortably up there. Not only that, we aim to put a rotary aerial, rotating aerial, right on the very top.
Mm-hmm.
So something like you see in that picture there will rotate round on the top, so we can point it in the direction we want to transmit. At the moment we have a big wire aerial up there which is over 200 foot long, hangs down to each side. And in a way it's sort of potluck where you get with that. We know that generally it radiates southwest and northeast, but you might get somebody up north of England or somewhere like that on it. So.
And do you know who you're going to get when you?
No, really you don't.
So it's totally
it's a matter of chance.
Yeah.
You go on the air and you start calling CQ, CQ. This is Golf 3 Lima Papa Charlie, which is our call sign, and you do that several times. Yeah. If you want to be fancy, you say calling on 20 metres or 17 metres or whatever it is you're calling on, and standing by for a call. Now, some guy at the other end of the earth is tuning around on his radio and he picks you up and he'll call you back. And it's as easy as that.
It's lovely.
We're all licensed amateurs. We all took tests.
Can I just ask what the average age of you is?
Average age, well, two of them are going to be 60, well, three of them are 60 and I'm 82, so
yes,
you work it out.
Yes.
It's somewhere between 60 and 70.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
fantastic. It's so nice that it should be brought back to life.
Well, that's the whole idea. I got onto Ofcom and said I used to hold the licence in the camp way back in 1960 odd. I would like to take that call out. Now the guy was obviously suspicious, which he had to be, it's his job. And he said, but how do I know you were the holder of that licence? I will need some proof. Yeah. So I said, well, that's very easy. In actual fact, what I did was photograph the front of that, which has all the information about what I did in the army. Yeah. Not only shows that I served in the regiment, but it also says that I was very keen in amateur radio. I photocopied that and sent them a copy. He was over the moon with it. Oh, yes, great, right. So
fantastic.
He reissued the licence.
Right, can you tell me, could you be useful to the army now?
Well, I feel I could, as long as I didn't have to run.
But could you be useful to the army down there? Is that mast?
If they needed me, yes.
Yes.
But yes, I could. I suppose the answer, I could be.
Yes.
More to the point, though, I could be more useful to the ambulance service or the police.
Do they know about
There
this?
is, well, they should do, but I'm not a member of an organisation. I should know the name, but I can't remember, so I'm not going to try. But there is a radio amateur organisation which is well known to the police and the ambulance service that offer their services in the case of an emergency should communications fail.
Yeah. Now,
people like me can get stuff going on a battery we don't. If the mains fail, so be it. We'll get
Yeah.
it going somehow with
Yeah.
batteries or something.
I was going to ask you about that actually, because
Yes.
presumably you're plugged into the mains at the moment.
Yeah,
But could you do a solar thing? I mean, I'm just thinking.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Are you
we
going to
could.
do that?
in fact,
Or a little
well,
wind
we've
generator?
thought about that
Yes.
because there's never a day I go up there that the wind isn't blowing like you wouldn't believe.
Of course.
It's wide open. And
Yeah.
There's always a wind up there.
Yeah.
Now, what we do at the moment, the equipment, I have standby equipment there, which is being charged up. The batteries in the bottom of that cabinet I was telling you about,
Yeah.
which are charged up from the mains.
Yes.
And if the mains fails, those batteries will keep it going for several hours.
Yes.
So
You could link those to wind
if
generator
we could charge
or
those
solar.
from wind generators,
Yeah. Lovely.
yeah, as well. I'd like to do that sometime.
Yeah. It all sounds great.
mm.
But you're a group of 4, and
Yeah.
you're not making any money out of it.
No.
And there's a little bit of outlay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next job, one of the projects going on at the moment, which Colin, whose call sign is G3NNG, lives over at Farrington. He is working on an amateur TV repeater. In other words, he'll transmit television over
Yeah.
it, and it will be repeated from our tower out for several miles. Then, so other radio amateurs can do the same thing. So instead of talking, they look at each other
Yes.
with pictures.
Yes.
That's just another radio amateur work is. I mean, there's so many aspects
So
of
it's
it.
developing anyway, isn't it?
You can get up to all sorts of things with it.
No, it's just my other question is, can you get up to mischief?
Can I?
Get up to mischief. I mean, can the War Office or whatever it's called now be worried about you?
No, because we know we'd lose our licences
Yeah,
if
okay.
we got caught.
Yes.
You get, if you listen to the CBers,
Yes.
they will be using bad language all the time.
Yes. Yes.
You won't find that on the radio
Yes.
amateurs. Not that we don't swear, yeah, I swear, but you don't do it over the air.
Yeah.
And, you know, with them it's nearly every other word. Though some of them see the light and become radio amateurs later on. In fact, a lot of them do.
Yeah.
And if you get on late at night, there is a repeater just the other side of Oxford, and I often listen to that. And you will hear the truckers at night talking to each other with license. They've got licenses. They're not
Yeah.
swearing,
Yeah.
but they're truckers, and they're calling each other. Where are you going to be in half an hour?
Yeah.
Meet up and we'll have a coffee,
Yeah.
and things like this. And it's quite
Well, mind
fun
you,
to listen to.
I've got one other question. I probably have to think about
Yeah.
this, but the young will say, "Well, what is all this for? We can do it on mobile phones."
Exactly,
Mm.
it's a fight. If you want to get somebody in.
Yes.
We were at a wedding not so long ago, and 2 young lads there said, "Can you give us a lift
Yeah.
home?" So we said, "Yeah, we're going past it." They're friends of Valerie's.
Yeah.
And the 2 lads are in the back, and I have amateur radio in the car.
Yeah.
And as I go about the countryside, I'll get into one of these repeaters and
Yeah.
talk to whoever. Now, a lot of the repeaters nowadays are connected to the internet.
Yeah.
So, where we were in Catterick is connected to one in New Zealand. So we're driving along and my radio's on, and all of a sudden up pops this repeater. And who should be calling but a friend of mine from New Zealand. I knew him. I knew who it was. It wasn't by accident or anything.
Mm.
So I called him back immediately,
Mm.
and we started having this conversation. And I thought at the end of it, these 2 chaps in the back might have said, "Well, that was interesting," or
Yeah.
"Oh, Dickie Bird."
No.
It was just over the top of they well, as you put it, the mobile phone, you
We'll
see.
do it. Yes.
And
I
it's
know.
the same with the internet. Has killed another aspect of amateur radio, although which I keep going. I'll keep that going from home. It's called packet radio, and that you can exchange messages by computer over the radio. And of course, it was in actual fact the foundation for email. Radio amateurs were doing it long before email came along, and of course, once guys could do it on email, they dropped doing it on the radio, and so all these stations closed down.
Yeah.
There's a few of us left,
Well, I think it's great.
And
I
we have
think
a
this
little conference once a year.
Yeah, and I love the idea of this being the centre of this little universe being just up the hill in Weald. I think it's fantastic. A little,
Just pop
little
up there
concrete.
sometime
I
and have a
will.
look.
I will. Yeah, it's just
We'll
wonderful.
try and lay something special on for you.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll let you know I'm coming then. But I'll have to do it on the telephone. Thank you, Ray. It's fantastic.
Pleasure.
It's a lovely story, and I love what you're doing now. Yeah, just lovely. Thank you for coming and everything.
Good.